Good morning. Welcome to Sales Chatter. We've got a treat for you. If it's your first time coming on here, welcome. If you're a seasoned person who's always been taking a look at our podcast, thank you so much for your support. This is the podcast with our mission of giving tips and strategies for getting 10,000 reps to hit a million GP. I'm your co-host, Ryan Mohammed. With me is my main man, Jeff Dickinson, the president and CEO of RGTX Logistics Solutions. How you doing this morning, brother?
Good, my man. Yeah, I think it's going to be a great show. I'm looking forward to it. I'm ready when you are. So you want to go? Let's do
Let's
this.
go.
To the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
There we go. So you always gotta love that intro, right, Jeff? It's one of the
I think
best ones
so,
out
man.
there, and it's all right, right? Today we've got an amazing guest, somebody personally that I've seen through his LinkedIn journey, kind of just progress in his career, and he's always been about family, been about for his background where he came from. I believe he was 6.5 when he immigrated here from Europe. I think it was like plus 25 degrees, and then he came to Calgary where it was like minus 40 degrees, right? So that change that he had to do and pivot and do great things. He's somebody that everybody knows and always willing to give a helping hand. And that's the one thing that Jeff is always big about is collaboration. And I truly believe that our guest today, I'm going to introduce him. It's going to be Nurf Nadarevic. Welcome to the show, brother. We're so happy to have you this morning out of Windsor. How's the weather this morning? How did that snow treat you last night?
Oh, it was good morning, guys. First of all, good morning, everybody that's listening. It's a lot. I mean, for Windsor, we got about locally 20 centimeters here in my area, but for us, it's a lot. I'm used to it. I mean, I spent almost 12 years in Calgary, so we're used to cold and used to cold weather. But this humidity cold, this wet cold, it hits you differently. It goes directly to your bones, and minus 10 here is different than minus 10 in Calgary, because here it kind of cools you from the inside out, as opposed to out there where it's just you kind of feel it linger on your skin a little bit. So
It's kind of crazy to think because like I always kind of see on TikTok all the housing prices in Calgary, and I'll text my wife and I'll send it to her and I'll be like, these houses are pretty nice. Maybe we should look at it. And then you figure out there's really nothing to do there. And then when winter hits, it hits. Like as Jeff used to come to London, Ontario from there. So Nerf, for everybody who's watching, can you talk a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you're all about?
Yeah, so as people heard in the intro, I moved quite a long time ago in 1995 to Canada from Bosnia during the civil war that broke out in my home country, and like you were mentioning in the intro there, it was plus 25 in Croatia, and from the airport when we left, and we landed in Calgary. Some blizzard or something was going on, minus 40. And we got out, and it was just outside of Calgary where we settled in a little town called High River, which was just actually named the number 8 spot in Canada to live for small towns. And well-deserved, amazing community. I mean, if you're looking for a community where people care about you, care about your children, care about how you're going to grow up, care about all that, High River is a place. And I have a lot of respect for Albertans, hardworking people, and Western Canada as a whole as well, all of Canada actually. And so we settled up there, and we were leaving the airport, and that blizzard that day, it was minus 40, and my dad was like, I want to go back. I don't know if this is for me. My mom was telling him, my late mom was telling him, calm down, like it's okay. Maybe this is better than starvation, so to speak. And we were driving on the highway, and we're looking out on the fields, the open fields, and there's cows and horses with like sweaters on. My dad's like, this is unbelievable. I've never seen, especially when you're an immigrant, you're not used to seeing cows and horses with sweaters. So that was quite an interesting part of our first kind of introduction to Canada, so to speak. But in addition to that, again, I finished high school up there. I came to Windsor. We settled down here in 2007 in the summertime, I went to the University of Windsor, got a biochem degree, and then authentically and naturally, once you get your biochem degree, you enter logistics, right? I mean, that's just the natural path, right? So after I got into logistics in 2010, my dad said, there was two paths I could take. It's either go down the med school path, continue education, or let's start a family business in trucking. And family's everything to me. And I wanted something that was closely knit, closely tied, and something we can do together. And no matter how I spun it, it felt like that trucking was for me, and asset based. So I got into asset based. We had one truck at that time. My dad was my driver. He already had 3 years of experience prior to us opening up our own little joint. And I remember my first shipment and my first call and all that. So that was really exciting, as a new kid that came out of, critical thinking university mentality, where it's like, I went to university to learn how to critically think, and then I was going to apply that to med school. I had no clue what logistics was. I had no clue what trucking was. I didn't even know there was 18 wheels. Like, I literally had no clue what any of that was. So I learned along the way, and I kept adding to the, like the arrows to your quiver. You just keep adding and adding and adding as things went on. I learned how to speak to brokers. I learned how to speak to shippers. I learned how to speak to potential prospects, all that on the asset-based side. And then in 2012, I got an opportunity to work as a dispatcher in a logistics office for Landstar, and for a Landstar agent. And that was a big learning curve for me. I went and I just dropped some wine to a Landstar agent that was giving us loads daily. And I said, I just came to introduce so you can put a face to the emails. I literally said that to them. And they said, hey, that's perfect. Do you want a job? And I was like, what do you mean a job? I mean, he's like, well, we really like how you update us. We really like how you, carry yourself. And you seem to really love your dad a lot. And he was like giving all these, explanations as to why. And I looked at my dad. I was like, well, I mean, some extra income, I guess, doesn't hurt. A side hustle, so to speak. He's like, well, why don't you dispatch your dad from our office, but work with us as well? So I did that for 3 years. And I mean, we went from, $600,000 in revenue in terms of the office, the Landstar office, to 6.4 million by the time I exited 3 years later. So it was hyper growth mode for us in that office. I really learned a lot. My first day on the job, actually, I walk in and the owner of the agency says, we're going to just today focus on getting you comfortable with the Landstar system, how to log in, how to do some tracking. You'll do some, some mimicking with our lead dispatcher in the group of 5 people. And we'll go from there. And I said, no problem. So he sits me down, sets me up, everything. Not even like 15 minutes into the introductions of the people, the phones start ringing off the hook like you wouldn't believe. And the agency owner walks in and closes the door and says, Nurf, are you comfortable booking trucks? I'm like, I just logged in. I have no, I don't know what's going on. I mean, I can learn. He's like, okay, how about this? You just start taking the calls. Any call that comes in, you take in the driver name, the truck and trailer number, and how far out he is from pickup. I'm like, what's going on? Like, what is this? What load is this? Where is it? Where is it going from? And he says, there's a line down for a Volkswagen plant somewhere in like Tennessee, Chattanooga or something. And they had to move some stamping dies or something. It was literally like as many trucks as you can get in. That first day that I was on the job, I booked 47 trucks. The first day. I walked out of there shaking like this. I was excused, but I was like wet from sweat because the anxiety from all that like just hit you right away. And then everything from there was like smooth sailing. After that first week of like delivering all those loads and like getting the PODs, getting the bill of ladings, talking with drivers. Some drivers I couldn't understand because they sounded like they had golf balls in their mouth because they had those southern accents. Like, like that. And like, I had no clue. I never had that experience before. You know what I mean? So for me, it was like a big learning curve, but it was like getting literally thrown in lava, like getting thrown in a volcano and like figure it out on your own. So that was a really, really good experience for me. And that's how I got started. And then in 2015, I took it on myself to open up my own non-asset based side of logistics, freight brokering. And that's kind of how I got into this whole logistics space where, you know, I was then the one that was talking directly with customers and getting them onboarded, and talking with carriers, getting them onboarded, and slowly but surely building my own book of business that was not related to anything I had done in the past, while at the same time growing my dad's, you know, 1 truck to 5 trucks. And they were all friends. And then when COVID hit, unfortunately, we had to, like, you know, I had to actually go personally visit every trucking company in Windsor and say, okay, can you guys take this owner operator in? Like, he worked for us. We currently don't have any freight. The big boys took the freight during the pandemic. Before the pandemic, trucks were rolling. We had dedicated freight Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Tuesdays and Thursdays were expedite days where we had availability for trucks that, you know, we're going from, we pick up transloaded stuff from Woodhaven, Michigan, or Taylor, Michigan, delivered direct up to Toronto area. Really good expedited paying stuff, like from $1,500 to $2,500 expedited. And we really stuck to that model. And I translated that into my logistics model. And that's where I focus, is like expedite, time critical, urgent. Where the heck's my freight? You know, why is it not on the dock? You know, customer resolution, customer issues, delays. Dealing with that is like my bread and butter, because that's all I've really known for you know, a majority of my logistics career. So, and here we are today. So I'm still doing that. In addition to that, I'm obviously doing some consulting too for new freight brokers, new logistics professionals, people that you know, want to kind of hear it or see it firsthand, or get experience, see visual evidence of how to talk to customers, and audio files where I'm talking and resolving problems, or I'm cold calling customers and things of that nature. So that's where we are today as of 2023, end of January.
Awesome. Awesome. I can say right now, Nurf, that there's nothing like what we call baptismal by fire. Just go in there, you know, and let you do your thing. That's awesome. 47 loads in one day. That's
it's, you know, there's some just
unbelievable. And the range of drivers you get, like in terms of, you know, personality traits and the way you speak to them. I mean, that first day taught me so much that I carried on that as I went along. And I was able to actually apply those lessons to how I was going to talk to different personality types along the way, specifically speaking for drivers, because, you know, we're not all the same shapes, sizes, and we don't come from the same cultures. I mean, in this industry, we have to work together. We have to collaborate. We have to reason. And I find that the best thing is always try to be the one that's extinguishing the fire, except the one that's starting it. And that seems to have worked really well for me. So,
you know, that's really funny that you mentioned that, because I'm an independent Landstar agent and have been working as one since 2019. And I came out of the auto industry for Ford Motor Company. I ran the second largest DC for Ford Motor Company. So when I say baptismal by fire, literally, I think that there's nothing else harder out there than JIT, full truckloads going into PDCs or lines down where they need that equipment. So I understand and feel your sweat. I really honestly do. So I don't think there's any other way, Nurf, to learn the business except going that way, because I think you'll agree. I don't think there's anything tougher than that.
Yeah, you know, it was difficult to listen to customers call you every name in the book, and have 37 voicemails, so to speak, and missed calls, essentially, not voicemails, but missed calls. And, you know, your voicemails being completely full from managers, from plants, you know, Ford, Chrysler, Toyota, whoever it is. And then the corrective action responses, I kid you not, some of them were 12, 15 pages long of what you did, what went wrong.
Yep.
Not really who to blame, but more so like, how are you going to fix this so that we can continue to trust you when we have additional urgent freight that needs to go from point A to point B.
Yep, that was back in '04, actually '02 through '05.
Mm-hmm.
I used to create those work instructions and send them out to my carrier base, and that is the truth. I mean, it was very detail oriented. If you wanted to continue doing business with the big auto manufacturers, you had to fill all that out, and if they weren't happy with it, you were gone. You were gone just like that, just because of the demand on that. So I appreciate what you said on that. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah.
It was awesome to see. And gents, what we've been doing on Sales Chatter Nerf is we've been having a theme of the week, and the beginning of the year we kind of started getting that journey, exactly what you're doing with your consulting, helping new reps kind of get some tips and tricks, because and Jeff agrees as well, is that we're not gatekeepers of what this industry has done for us. Like, this industry, for all three of us can agree that it's given us so much. So that gets into today's topic. This week we've been talking about getting your first customer. Monday we talked about negotiation, talking to carriers. Tuesday we talked about SOPs and credit. Today's episode is actually booking your first shipment, period. Your first time. So Jeff, I'll get you to start first. What was your first shipment that you booked? The customer, what was it? The mode of transport, and anything that you remember from it, because I feel like we all remember our first shipment, as we should.
I do, and as a matter of fact, I'm looking at it right now. I framed my first freight bill, and it's hanging on the wall, and the date and everything. And it was actually from a friend of mine, and it was an international shipment that came in from Spain. It was all balsamic vinegar from Portugal, and she pretty much started my business. Nurf doesn't know this, but everybody else does. I hardly ever make cold calls, because I was in that shipper position for a very long time. And I'm a very empathetic person, because they get hammered every single day with a lot. So my first shipment came from a referral, and then that just led to another referral. And then my ex-bosses and so forth and so on just opened up the doors. And I've had my customers on for a very long time. All of them have been on for 2 to 3 years, which is unheard of in the industry, but I'm not a transactional one. I'm a dedicated one. So that first shipment, even though it was transactional, meant a lot for me. And first year I was in business, I made $9,000, but I fell back on my confidence and my experience level, and it really helped me out. But that first shipment means a lot to me.
Awesome to hear about. What about you, Nurf?
Yeah, so for me, I'm gonna give a couple of examples, just because the fact that I had asset-based and non-asset-based first shipments. So on the asset side of things, my first shipment, I made a mistake, but it ended up being, how do I say, a good way into the customer. So I'll explain. Don't worry, it's not too crazy, but I saw a load posted on the board on C.H. Robinson, because C.H. Robinson was one of the first brokers that wanted to work with us, as us being new. Anyways, we get signed up. I see the load. It's going from like Detroit to Toronto for like $650, and I tell the guy, okay, I can do $750, and he says, okay, book. Anyways, we get the load confirmation. Everything looks good. I see the commodity, though. It says auto parts, but it says one envelope, not pallet, but one envelope. So I was like, envelope. So I call him. I say, it says that the unit of measurement or type is envelope instead of pallet. He's like, yeah, it's just a small little yellow envelope that needs to be delivered with some just designs that needs to be urgently delivered up to Toronto, because it was some like Oshawa plant or something. I think at the time was GM or something.
Yeah.
And I said to the guy, okay, no problem. I'm like, does this have to be a 53-foot dry van? He's like, if you have a straight truck, works, but whatever you have is fine. And I tell him I have a 53-foot dry van, and we're gonna send him in. And he says, no problem. So I print out the paperwork, bill of lading, everything. My dad's at home, by the way. I print it, I give it to him. He's looking through the paperwork, looks at the bill of lading I was given. He says, it says here it's a little envelope that's like letter sized, paper sized, letterhead. And I tell him, yeah. He's like, can I take the Honda Odyssey? And I say to him, I mean, you can, but I gave them a truck and trailer number. He's like, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. I'm like, are you sure? I'm like, this is our first customer. I don't want to mess this up. He's like, let's give it a try. So my dad went with the Honda Odyssey to the US, passed the border, went up, picked up. It was one envelope. He put it right beside on the passenger seat and delivered it direct up to Toronto. So we figured, probably a good way to save on fuel, but I wouldn't recommend that. I would not recommend doing that. It's just that I had strict confirmation there was definitely just an envelope, a yellow envelope that I had to deliver. And so that was my first shipment ever, was just a yellow envelope that we delivered out for $750, which was fantastic, and we saved a lot on fuel. On the carrier side, still my first shipment that was full truckload was also auto parts, and we came back empty that day with the Odyssey back home to Windsor. My dad hopped out in his truck, picked up in St. Clair Shores, Michigan, headed back up to Mississauga. Direct delivery. Just the way I handled that, I called the customer and let them know 15 minutes out, emailed the customer, let them know we were on site, emailed once loaded, bill of lading, weight, pieces, time out, emailed in transit every single hour, emailed arrival at delivery, emailed empty at delivery, emailed POD within 2 hours after delivery, and emailed invoice that same week. On the broker side, on my own, again, I told you about the 47 shipments, but when I went on my own in 2015, my first shipment as a broker, I got into a customer. The load was 200 and some miles it was like Memphis to somewhere. Just FAK, so freight of all kinds. And I bid on it for $700. Didn't have a truck in hand. Customer says book it. Again, I had 3 days to book. I made a mistake on my first shipment as well. I didn't take in consideration the deadhead miles, the Memphis market, how hard it is to find a truck at certain times. This was picking up on a Monday at 5 a.m. Very difficult to find a truck in Memphis. Very difficult. Most guys were either offloading if they were coming to Memphis, and a lot of the guys either had stuff already on their truck, hauling it out, or were already outbound on Sunday evening or Sunday afternoon outside of Memphis. So very tough lane. And I had to negotiate with the carrier. And I told him, okay, can you do 600? It was like 210 miles, 209 miles or something. It was a very short run. And the guy says, it was driver, owner, operator. He says, I can't do 600. I can do 750. I'm like, man, I'm going to be straight up with you. This is my first customer. All I have in this load is 700. Can you make me at least be profitable? At least show green. And at that time, I was a broker agent. And I was a broker agent for Roadrunner at the time. I was like, anything, just show me something that I could be in the green. And he says to me, can we do $710? And I says, guy, just can we be in the green? Can you do $699.99 and I'll give you the load? And he's like, let me talk to it with my wife. I was like, oh my God. So he goes and talks to his wife and he comes back, says, book it, we'll do it. He did a fantastic job. Sent in everything on time, arrived on time, delivered on time, everything. But the back end of that story, once that whole shipment was completed, I actually got a check for 1 cent from Roadrunner for that load. And I went to the bank to get advice on if I could even cash a 1 cent check. And the lady she was trying not to laugh, but she says, no, we cannot. We cannot cash this, but you can use it as a memorabilia or like whatever, it's memorabilia, And I say to her, you know what, that's a good idea. So for the longest time, I had that check as motivation. I'm like, for every shipment that I do from now on, I want to make more than a cent. I don't want to go through this again where I'm getting checks at like a cent or whatever. So it eventually ended very well, and I ended up getting better at quoting and better at, obviously connecting with carriers and getting relationships built. But one of the first markets that I hit to get carrier network was Memphis after that, because I found it one of the hardest in the country to get load coverage on. I don't know if it was just me or my face or whatever it was, but I had the hardest time with Memphis.
That's amazing. You know, and it's funny because like even like my story was it's similar to Jeff. I kind of laughed as well because mine was kind of a layup. I basically there was a rep who was working there and he decided after like 40, 45 days, he's like, I'm not gonna, this is not in for me. So, you know, I don't know if you guys have worked at corporations before, but when somebody leaves, it's kind of like the hawks kind of like surround. So the boss has all the leads. It's like, okay, Ryan, you have this, Josh, you have this, and things like that. So it was actually a balsamic vinaigrette company as well. So I reached out, got on the phone, said, "Hey, I'm your new rep. So and so is not with us anymore. If there's anything I can help you out with." And luckily, that same day, he said, "Yeah, I do have a shipment." It was an LTL 2 skids at a Costco. And mind you, this was a small brokerage, so we never did Costco deliveries, we never did Walmart deliveries, we never did anything. So I went and asked my boss. My boss is like, "Hey man, just hit up Day and Ross, see what they can do." And anybody who knows Day and Ross, they're probably one of the worst 100-weight LTL carriers that you can use. Sorry if they're not going to sponsor us, but with that being said, we booked it with them, we got it, and we got it done. But it's the same thing. I actually framed that as well. My first load with those guys, and you know the feeling that when you book that first load after pounding the phones, pounding the emails, making those things as a beginner freight broker. And Nerfad, you're going to be feeling that with the consultations that you're doing. People who are brand new into the industry, they're going through those emotions. I want to get both of your opinions. What kind of advice do you guys kind of have for someone finally getting through and booking that first load?
Jeff, you go first.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, for me, in terms of advice that I give for brokers, um, celebrate the win. Be happy that you got it. Let it be a motivation for you. Moving forward, every time that you get that next shipment, you can also celebrate it. It's fine. What the reason I'm saying that is you have to enjoy this journey, and it's going to start with minimal profit and maybe some hardships along the way in terms of you getting to know the carriers that are servicing your first lanes and them getting to know what your expectations are. But you have to be able to communicate that and always tell the truth to your customer. No matter what it is, it could be the worst thing of all time. Always just tell them the truth, because one lie, I kid you not, turns into 30 lies, and 30 lies turns into 300 lies. You don't want that because it's a recipe for disaster. So that would be my number one advice, especially when you're booking your first shipment, and due diligence and proactiveness. So when you book that shipment, ask the carrier before pickup. If you have a day in advance, ask them like the evening before, the afternoon before. Say, hey, are we all good for tomorrow? Good. And confirm if it's the same truck and trailer number, same driver, all that kind of stuff. Unless you're doing some kind of digital platform or something where that information is readily available for you. And then in addition to that, always check up on them in a very kind manner. Don't push them, don't coerce them, don't swear at them. Treat them like your customers too. Carriers are just like your customers. Treat them as if you're going to lose them today, and treat them with respect, because without them, you literally have nothing. You literally have nothing as a logistics professional, because they're the ones that carry your freight, and they're the ones that are integral to making your customers be your customers. And that would be my advice.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. First and foremost, your customers are the ones that sign your paycheck, not your boss. So they are the most important ones that you should actually be focusing in on. And learn to agree to disagree, be honest, be forthcoming, be totally transparent. Tell them things they want to hear, tell them things that they don't want to hear. That's how long-term business relationships are fostered, by having that interaction and that type of engagement. Don't overpromise, don't underdeliver. And hopefully, if you're a newbie and you're coming into the business, that you have a really good report to and a manager that trains you well, that tells you exactly what Nurf just said, because you, as a newbie coming into the industry, will not know those questions, to ask that prospect or that first customer. So listen more than talk. And when you're confused, ask questions. Ask questions, 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 because you've heard it over and over again. There's no such thing as a stupid question at all. That's pretty much all I have to say on that, but I agree with what Nurf was saying on that too.
I'd like to touch on one more point for subsequent customers as well after that first shipment. If a customer comes to, or you go to a customer, you guys engage in conversation, and they say, and I'll give you a real life example. I went to a customer that moved aluminum chips. I had no experience moving aluminum chips. I had no idea how it was put into a trailer, none of that. So I told the guy literally in his face over a coffee at Tim Hortons, I said, listen, I have no clue what you're talking about in terms of the aluminum chips, how it's transported, what trailers it goes on. Can you take me to a facility somewhere in this area, your facility, something? Show me so I can learn, so I can get you the carriers that are willing to move this stuff. He drove me. We left at Tim Hortons. He drove me to a plant here in Windsor, just off of Lozon Road, and he walked me into a plant. I put a hard hat on. He took me to the place where these trailers are parked inside, and then this aluminum chip stuff is blown into the trailers with this big like fan, this industrial fan, and it's just packed in there, just packed. I had no clue that that's how it was done. Once I took videos and pictures, obviously approved videos and pictures from the customers, not just my secret camera. I went and found carriers that were able to service this lane, and this lane was even serviced via intermodal. So it's like, you have to ask, like Jeff says, you have to ask questions, and you have to be modest and humble. Sometimes you're not going to have the answer. You're not going to know at what temperature broccoli moves, or at what temperature, or how ice cream is transported, or how that multi 48 stop Home Depot load is delivered, or whatever the case may be. But ask, how are flour loads delivered? I once had a load many times, but this my first time moving plastination loads. I had no clue what plastination was. It's essentially people that are like donate their bodies to science, and then their bodies are displayed at science centers all over the world.
Wow.
So and they're moved in like almost like rock star box when they're moving like all their equipment and stuff, those black boxes.
Big boxes.
They're moved in those big black boxes all over North America. And these companies, these plastination companies, are worldwide, and they have contracts with museums and places of natural history or whatever the case may be. And this is moved. I had no clue how it was moved. I had a customer show me step by step, but he didn't have the time to go and vet the carriers, find the carriers, and even clear the carnets, which is what is used to clear across the border this equipment that's eventually going to make its way back to the U.S. Carnets are used as a documentation for freight that goes back and forth across the border without any pending delays, essentially. You may be pulled over for secondary inspections because, again, you're moving something that once was living, so they want to confirm like everything's okay and everything's true. But again, I had no clue, but I asked. I said, I want to do these for you. You just have to tell me exactly how it's done, or connect with someone that can explain to me how it's done.
Yep.
And that's what I have to say on that for sure.
Yeah, and it's funny because I had this conversation with Scott Watanabe because he has a training course that lasts, I think it was 12 weeks. Yeah. And I said, you know what? I think what would be mandatory for newbies coming in, if there is like a local warehouse or distribution center, that you take these new guys, women coming into it, and go to a site if you're friends with them and show them the ongoings of operations and logistics and how things tick, so that they get a better perspective. Because let's face it, a lot of people that are coming into the industry on the brokerage side have never worked in a warehouse or have never seen a DC. So since they're going to be working with people that work in those, why not go there and see how the operation is? Spend a day there, understand what shippers go through, and dock supervisors and all of that, because this is part of the engagement and the understanding, so that you're congruent and it helps you out greatly. So I think that should be a mandatory step for all brokerages if you can do it, because I feel that there's huge benefits from doing that.
I think that's amazing, like, to actually know that, especially with things that you don't know. And Nerf, I want to kind of touch on what you kind of got started with, especially being a dispatcher Landstar. I have a similar kind of story where I started off as a dispatcher myself. I did it for about 2 years, learned the industry. My boss at the time, who was the top sales guy, he did all open deck, and I found love for open deck. I truly loved it because of everything he did. And then once I was like, okay, I saw the money he was making, and I was like, okay, well, I can try the sales thing. Let me get into it. And then understanding my biggest mistake that I made was that I should have went after open deck customers because that's what I'm familiar with. But I should have asked, right? And that's the number one thing that you guys both said is that I assumed, and that's the worst thing you can do. I assumed that if I get into open deck, I'm stealing customers or prospects away from my boss, right? The one who kind of fed me with everything that was kind of going on. So I went into dry van, I failed. I went into reefer, I failed. And then I went back to the bread and butter, what I can do and what I can talk shop on. Nerf, can you talk about how recommendations and word of mouth play into your career?
Yeah, so actually, referrals, recommendations, and whatever you want to really label it is very important, especially in your local area. What I mean by that is if you go to a shipper and they're side by side with another shipper, and they both have docks, you go, you service that first customer, it goes well. You can even begin the process of recommendations, for example. What I mean by that is you can go into that facility next to them and say, listen, I'm moving loads for customer A, your next door neighbor. You can talk to so and so over there to hear kind of the backstory in terms of how we function and how we communicate back and forth, and how we take care of them. And we just like the opportunity to take care of you as well. Doesn't have to be today, doesn't have to be tomorrow, but at least we can get the conversation started and just be on a human level open with them. If it's a different type of product that they're moving, or different commodity, ask them, what are their pain points? What are they struggling with? Is there a lane they're having trouble doing? Is it a volume thing? Is it a process thing? Is it a financial thing? What is it that is really being hard for them to cover certain shipments at any particular point in their, freight shipping season, whatever that may be, maybe all year round, whatever the commodity is, right? So in terms of that, you can do that where those people can then be proactive on their end and go actually talk to the next door neighbor and be like, hey, what do you think of this bald headed freak that came over and asked us to run our loads? Do you think he's capable? Ask questions like that. In terms of external recommendations, it's always nice to get a LinkedIn message saying, hey, I heard about you from so and so. They say you do good work. I have this lane going on. Can you help me out with it? I get those often. Or when you see a nice note or comment, or just an honest comment on Google reviews about what you meant to that carrier, or what you meant to that shipper, or what you meant to that freight forwarder in terms of how you helped them out. I've had people reach out on LinkedIn and say, you did a lot of work for me in my previous endeavors or previous places of employment. I'm going to get you in on the truckload side of things for my new place of employment, or whatever the case may be. So recommendations go a long way. Referrals go a long way. And even some loyalty programs. I don't have any problem with that. If you have some kind of customer loyalty program where you go and you do some kickbacks for them, it doesn't have to be, $5,000 a week, but it can be some nice form of a random act of kindness, a thank you note, or maybe some cash back, or whatever the case may be, to set you up for success. And particularly the best place to start would be your local area, because it's a lot easier to manage, right? You're going from shipper to shipper in your city or in your county or in your region of province that you're in, or state. Maybe you live in Dallas and you want to only focus on northern Texas, for example, and you take some time out of your busy schedule, if you have even an ops team, or if you want to take some time on your own and go visit these places. One guy that does this often, that I have a lot of admiration and respect for, and he's on LinkedIn, is Robert P.
Yeah.
Poage, or I always
Page, I think.
Page.
Page.
Doage. So Robert is a true ambassador of the logistics industry, and the way he goes and visits places and shares his knowledge is like none other. And these are things that you can do that you may not get a recommendation from a customer right away, but it may happen in a week, it may happen in a month, it may happen in a year, but you're building that book of business, you're building that, as we call that, sales funnel, and continuously follow up, but genuine follow up. Don't call, just say, hey, I want your business. Follow up, see what's up, see how they're doing, what's going on, build that rapport, and then you can go from there.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. I agree. Definitely a lot.
You guys are basically kind of very similar with that. And the reason why I kind of bring that up, and with our theme being like getting your first shipment and things like that, I always am a believer that you should be asking for recommendations after you've done the good job. So make sure it's delivered on time, everything's clean and everything like that. Because one thing that we were trained early in the industry was that, hey, if the shipper or the receiver isn't our customer, just keep a note of that. They could be like your next potential customer, because you can be handling the inbound and then they're like, hey, we need somebody for the outbound, and it's just completely different conversations. A referral can get you into so many doors. As Jeff kind of says, he always is big on getting recommendations. Jeff was always a big believer in that, hey, you want to know about me, go read about my recommendations on my LinkedIn profile. And they do have weight. I was actually reading them last night, Jeff. You have like 12 or 15 of them, and it's those things that are able to kind of benefit you in a little bit better way. In fact, I gotta ask you a random question here, but why is Christian from Kenwood Logistics one of your favorite ops guys that you ever dealt with?
Have an unsafe day, Ryan. Yeah, that was an interesting story. It hit close to home because it was a friend that got definitely hit up by that company, and it's rough to hear things like that. But he and they got caught for being unethical, for being whatever you want to label it. It's not the way to go. Threatening somebody's family, talking down to someone's family, talking down about someone's friend or something. That's talking trash in essence. Is not the way to go. This industry is very well connected. And if you do somebody wrong, it's going to come back to you tenfold in the negative aspect, and it's not good and it's not pretty. And that's the main reason why I shared that story, was that we got to get rid of that garbage out there, because that's too much. I mean, that is unbelievable that someone would go to those lengths for something that could have been solved a lot easier and better. I mean, again, they're not the most ethical company out there, or we're not the most ethical company out there, but it's not a way forward. I don't exactly know how those kind of people or those kind of companies sleep at night. I don't even really get how they make money. I literally don't get how people can trust them. I don't. It's over my head.
Yeah.
So.
I won't get into that, but I'll just leave it there, man.
I saw that. I read that this morning, and I just had to kind of throw that.
Yeah, unfortunately,
throw that alley oop to you.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is a family-friendly show, so I can't use words that I'd use.
Yeah, we'll air it after 10 o'clock.
We're in the trucking industry. Come on, Nurf.
Nurf, I've known you through Dan because of like the engagement, things like that. And one thing that I've noticed about you is that you're definitely a family man. And I remember when like your mom unfortunately passed away, and just kind of like the feelings on the post and things like that. You're very real and very personal. Something yesterday that I read about you, it made my heart really, really nice. So for those who don't know, Nurf was he actually purchased, I believe it's a vacation home or something like that, in his hometown. And you come from Bosnia. You've always advocated for your background. How important is family to you? I know that's a very vague question, but what has your growth in logistics has done for yourself and your family?
Yeah, and I like to share this message. Mainly because I want people to know that everything that people say is impossible is truly not impossible. The word itself is I am possible. So it is possible to do and achieve your dreams. Don't, if you set a goal for, 2 years from now, you're going to achieve that goal in 2 years. If you set it in 2 months, you're going to achieve it in 2 months. I'm a true believer of that. So logistics industry, every goal I've set in terms of customer acquisition, carrier relationships, maybe revenue goals, whatever, I've set because I've had a plan in action to get there. And it's literally doing things like your life depends on it. Family, in essence, is what defines me. I have went at great lengths to show love for my family, specifically the people in this household. So, again, my mom did pass away, but I treat it as if she's still here. I'll always love her. I love the values that she instilled in me. She always talked about um, having a home in every village, and that doesn't literally mean go and buy a home in every village. It means treat people so well that anywhere you go, you are welcomed. And that's how I treat my life, and that's how I treat the way I go about my day. I'm always using humor as a form of therapy, as a form of self therapy, but also you never know what that laugh means to somebody in an elevator, on the stairs, at a door, or whatever. I mean, I was telling a story the other day about an Edmonton Oilers fan that held a door open for me, and I'm a huge Calgary Flames fan. And I literally, while I was walking in, I looked at him laughing, and I said, "You want to go, buddy? Let's drop the gloves right now." And just that little, it's nothing. It's just a harmless joke. We ended up sitting and talking for like hours on end about logistics and about life and stuff. So you don't know what laughter and what that little sense of humor can do for somebody's day. And I love doing that. And in terms of family, in essence, I don't know what it is, but it drives me to be a better human being. It drives me to always approach the day in kindness. Every time I see my kid, if they're licking my office door with their tongue, or they're running around screaming or whatever, when I'm leaving this office, or if the door's open, they come in, I take a second, I bow down, I kneel down, I thank God for having them, and I kiss them. And that energy that you give towards your kid is actually going to be very helpful in their development as adults, because they're going to feel that love. They're going to know what love is. They're going to know what altruism is, and they're going to be able to carry that down to their kids. And that's why family is very important to me. And I treat my dad like my child almost. Like I love him to death. I respect him so much. I retired him 3 years ago because I thought that was the right thing to do. I did the same thing for my mom. I just thought that, hey, you guys did so much for me. Now I'm putting that big red stop sign in front of your face. Chill, enjoy the grandkids, go travel, do something, and just let me take care of all the things that you took care of up to this point in my life. And they've been instrumental in my development, in the way I carry myself, and all the values that they taught me, from sports to academics to, to be inquisitive, to be curious about life, to be curious about our existence in the universe. All that stuff came from my parents. And I carry that into logistics. And for those logistics people out there that are just getting started, don't let negative people affect the choices that you make. And always go to bat for your customers, your carriers, and for your family. And don't let anybody stand in your way. Everything is possible. Everything is literally possible.
Yes, sir.
It's that is spectacular. Jeff and I both. It's very rare that we have our mouths like jaws dropped. And one last question before we wrap the show up, but it's a little bit of a humor one. But Nurf, why shouldn't you eat garlic before you're listening to like the Earth's frequencies?
Yeah, so for whatever reason, I know this is a weird question, Jeff, sorry, but I like to meditate.
We do our research here, we do our research here on. I went through like 5 different podcasts. I did the background.
So I like to listen to the 528 hertz frequency and 239 hertz frequencies. I'm a weird man, so that is it literally makes my cells shake. I am vibrating. My vibrations are next level, and I feel alive when I do that. And I do that every night before bed. And you can find that stuff free to use on YouTube. It's unbelievable what it does for your psyche, for your mental health, and for relaxation. But for whatever reason, when you eat garlic, for whatever reason, it affects you in a very strange way where you cannot feel these frequencies. You are numb to these frequencies. They literally have no there's no attachment there. You can listen to any hertz frequency that you want from 0 to 10,000. Nothing will affect you if you eat garlic. And I have no clue why that is, or why that's the way it goes. It's something to do with the physiology and the nerve endings, but I don't know the detailed portion of that. But for whatever reason, if you eat garlic and you want to meditate, it's not going to go well for you. So it's weird. It is really a weird phenomenon, just like the whole pyramid stuff, right? So
Yeah, it's awesome, man. I figured I had to get that in there and kind of take it there. But Jeff, I would love to get your thoughts, brother, on today's episode. Having Nurf on, I know you guys are going to be on together this afternoon. Again, we'll plug that a little bit later as close up. But yeah, I want to get your thoughts, Jeff.
Yeah, no, Nurf, thanks for joining us today, man. A lot of your stuff I believe in strongly. I've been in the business for a long, long time. I really don't know what to say, because it's like it's really good when you're congruent and you agree on a lot of different things. And I think it has to do with that positivity nature, that good people, good thoughts, you always draw those type of people into your inner circle, and you kind of remove all that negativity and everything. And it's that click that we all look for in our lives, whether, it's in our business, it's in our personal lives. We want all that positivity and be able to shine that beam of light and share that with everybody that we walk into or engage with. We're not necessarily the biggest bear in the room when we walk into rooms, that we always make other people feel more important than ourselves. And I really feel that with you and what you said today. I can almost bet my life on it that that's pretty much the way that you operate. I operate that same way and believe in it so much. So thanks for sharing all that kind of stuff, man. It was great.
You're welcome. Like I said, I mean, I love this. This was a good feeling moment for me for this week, for sure. So
Thank you so much, Nerf. So, people looking to get in, I know you mentioned you do consulting as well. You definitely do some other things as well. Where can people get a hold of you, Nerf?
yeah, so they can reach me through LinkedIn. A lot of people are reaching me on LinkedIn, just a lot of private messages, direct messages, being sent out saying, hey, this is where I stand. This is what I'm looking for. This is my background in terms of my education or my experience in logistics. Where can we take it from here? Or people will always pick my brain and ask, open-ended questions about something. And that's a big thing too, by the way, in sales. Ask open-ended questions, because the open-ended questions is what keeps conversations going. So don't ask yes and no questions unless it's like, do you need this delivered today? Yes, no, like not that. But when those cold calls and those warm calls, always ask open-ended questions. That's what's going to open up the person to you. And like Jeff says, listen more than you talk. And the successful salespeople spend about 37 to 47% of their time talking. The rest is the floor or the platform for the customer or prospect. And I truly believe in those statistics. And I find that the most success is done when you listen, because most of your answers to your questions are in those answers that you're going to get from that conversation you're going to get from that customer, rather than from you saying, I do truckload, I do LTL, I do expedite, I do drayage, I do warehousing, I do cross-docking, I do hazmat, I do tanker endorsed, I do animal transport, I do funeral transport, I do Arctic transport. Don't do that. Listen to the customer, find out what they do or what they ship, and listen, because you're going to see on their face. I heard it the other day in the gym from a guy that says to me, we're really struggling on our expedites, specifically these few lanes. And I heard you're the logistics guy and all this stuff, and I thought I'd get some advice from you. And I said, listen, expedite is my bread and butter. I need a little more details about the lane, type of transportation, the mode, weight, pieces, all that stuff. Is there a schedule? Is it ad hoc? What is going on with the shipment before I can give you advice? But expedite is my bread and butter. I understand the expectations and the communication side of things, but give me some more details. But he literally gave me his pain point before I even asked anything. He just It was almost like a referral. He heard I was a logistics guy. Somebody told him I was a logistics guy inside of the gym. So yeah, I mean that's how it goes. And startup conversations at random places. You'll be surprised where you're going to find customers.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, man. So Nurf, I want to thank you so much for coming out this morning. This was a lot of fun. Truly, we got to do this again another time, definitely for sure. Everyone, thank you for coming out this morning. Catch the replay at 12 and 3 p.m. Eastern time. We'll be on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Join us tomorrow as we kind of put our feet up back and we just have some fun with Jeff and I. I believe might have a guest, but we're just gonna have some fun. We had a Monday to Thursday. We're talking about themes, and we'll get you guys ready for the weekend. So again, Jeff, Nurf, thank you guys for coming out today. Can you guys actually just plug before we close the show off your show today that you guys are going to be both doing together?
Yeah. Hold My Beer, Eastern Standard Time at 4:30 p.m. We're going to have a very special guest. I don't know who that is.
Click.
I don't know. I've heard rumblings. I've heard rumblings out there.
And it's down and dirty, open from all different segments, people who are in the industry. We pretty much just throw it out there and see what sticks and talk about freight. So we're looking forward to having it and having our guests there on it. So it's a twofer Thursday. So.
And I'm gonna pitch Tony for some drayage requests.
There you go.
All right, guys, have an amazing day. Crush your sales, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for everything.
Right, guys. God bless. Take care.